Ryan Collins stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, the cool glass a stark contrast to the warmth of the setting sun on his face. The New York City skyline sprawled before him, a glittering testament to ambition and success. At 42, Ryan was the embodiment of both, CEO of Teknova, one of the world's leading technology companies, and a self-made billionaire. He loosened his silk tie, the fabric whispering against his collar. The scent of coffee lingered in the air, a reminder of the countless late nights that had become his norm. Despite the hour, the office hummed with activity. Teknova was on the verge of launching a groundbreaking AI-driven healthcare system, and the pressure to deliver was palpable. Ryan's phone buzzed, the screen illuminating with a message from Sarah. "Don't forget, dinner at Oito. Love you." A smile tugged at his lips, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Sarah Bennett, his girlfriend of 3 years, was the one constant in his whirlwind life. At 38, she was a successful art curator, brilliant and beautiful. They made a striking couple, their relationship a frequent topic in New York's society pages. As he gathered his things to leave, his assistant, Jessica, knocked on the door. The sharp rap of her knuckles against the wood made Ryan flinch slightly. "Mr. Collins," Jessica said, her voice tinged with apprehension. "The board wants to move up the presentation for the healthcare AI. They're asking for next week." Ryan's jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck tensing. "Next week? That's impossible. We're not ready." "They're insistent, sir," Jessica replied, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blazer. "They mentioned something about a competing product from Silicon Valley." Ryan sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a lead blanket. "All right, tell them I'll make it happen. And Jessica, cancel my weekend plans. We're going to need all hands on deck." The elevator ride down to the parking garage gave Ryan a moment to breathe. The mirrored walls reflected a man he barely recognized. Tired eyes, a permanent furrow between his brows, the salt and pepper at his temples more pronounced than ever. As he slid into the buttery leather seat of his Aston Martin, the engine's purr did little to soothe his frayed nerves. The city streets blurred as he navigated through traffic, his mind already racing with plans for the upcoming presentation. He pulled up to the valet at Le Bernardin, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. The scent of garlic and herbs wafted from the kitchen, making his stomach growl. Sarah was waiting for him in the dimly lit interior, a vision in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves. "Hey, handsome," she greeted him with a warm smile and a kiss. The softness of her lips was a stark contrast to the hard edges of his day. "Tough day?" Ryan felt the tension in his shoulders ease as he sat down. "Nothing I can't handle. How was your day?" As Sarah launched into a story about a new exhibition she was curating, Ryan found his mind wandering. He nodded at appropriate intervals, but his thoughts were still back at the office, grappling with the board's demands. The waiter approached with a bottle of their favorite Bordeaux. As he poured, Ryan raised his glass. "To us," he said, clinking his glass against Sarah's. "To the calm in my storm." Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment, so briefly that Ryan almost missed it. But then it was back, dazzling as ever. "To us," she echoed, her voice carrying a hint of uncertainty that Ryan, lost in his own world, failed to notice. As they enjoyed their meal, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Sarah seemed distracted, her laugh a little forced. He chalked it up to his own stress and pushed the thought aside, unaware that the cracks in their relationship were beginning to show. The next morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ryan's penthouse. He awoke to an empty bed, the sheets cool where Sarah had lain. The faint scent of her perfume lingered on the pillow, a ghostly reminder of her presence. The smell of coffee drew him to the kitchen, where he found a note propped against the coffee maker. "Early meeting at the gallery. Didn't want to wake you. Love, S." Ryan frowned, trying to remember if Sarah had mentioned an early meeting. He shrugged it off and poured himself a cup of coffee, savoring the rich aroma as he scrolled through his emails. The bitter taste of the coffee matched his mood as he read through the mounting challenges facing Teknova. As he was about to set his phone down, it buzzed with a text. Sarah's name flashed on the screen, but the message wasn't for him. It read, "Can't wait to see you later. Our usual spot." Ryan's heart skipped a beat, his hand tightening around the phone. The message had obviously been sent to him by mistake, meant for someone else. His mind raced, conjuring images of Sarah meeting a mysterious stranger in some hidden corner of the city. He tried to push the thoughts away as he got ready for work, but they nagged at him throughout his morning meetings. The conference room felt stifling, the voices of his team fading into a dull buzz as he struggled to focus. By lunchtime, the tension was unbearable. He found himself in his office, Sarah's contact pulled up on his phone. His thumb hovered over the call button, hesitating. After a moment's internal struggle, he pressed call. It rang several times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's Sarah. Leave a message." Ryan ended the call without leaving a message, his unease growing. He pulled up her Instagram, scrolling through recent posts. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Pictures of art installations, city scenes, a selfie from their dinner the night before. But then he noticed something. In several of the photos, the same man appeared in the background, tall, with wavy dark hair and an easy smile. Who was he? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ryan went through the motions, attending meetings and reviewing reports, but his mind was elsewhere. By the time he left the office, the seeds of doubt had taken root, threatening to overshadow everything he thought he knew about his relationship. He arrived home to find Sarah in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. The rhythmic sound of the knife against the cutting board filled the air. She looked up as he entered, her smile warm but tired. "Hey, you're home early." Ryan leaned against the counter, studying her face. "Yeah, I wrapped up early. How was your day?" "Busy," Sarah replied, turning back to her chopping. "We're finalizing details for the new exhibition. It's been hectic." Ryan nodded, watching her hands move deftly with the knife. "I tried calling you at lunch." Sarah paused for a moment before resuming her task. "Oh, sorry. I was in meetings most of the day. Must have missed it." The lie hung in the air between them, thick and oppressive. Ryan knew her schedule. She always took lunch at p.m., no matter how busy the day. He'd called at quinze. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. "Is there something you want to tell me?" She set the knife down and turned to face him, her expression a mixture of confusion and wariness. "What do you mean?" Ryan took a deep breath, the scent of fresh vegetables and Sarah's familiar perfume filling his nostrils. "I saw a text on your phone this morning. It wasn't meant for me." Sarah's face paled, her hand gripping the edge of the counter. "Ryan, I can explain." But Ryan held up a hand, cutting her off. "I don't want explanations right now. I want the truth. Are you seeing someone else?" The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sounds of the city beyond their windows. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she struggled to find words. "It's not what you think," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He'd expected, hoped, for an immediate denial. This was as good as a confession. "I think I need some air," he said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, ignoring Sarah's calls behind him. The cool night air hit him as he stepped onto the balcony. The city stretched out before him, a sea of twinkling lights. But for the first time in years, Ryan felt utterly alone. The vast expanse of the city, a reflection of the growing distance between him and the woman he loved. The next morning, Ryan woke early, his mind already racing with plans. He'd barely slept, the events of the previous night playing on repeat in his head. Sarah lay beside him, her back turned, the distance between them feeling insurmountable. The soft sound of her breathing was a stark contrast to the turbulent thoughts swirling in his mind. He slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake her. In the kitchen, he made coffee, the rich aroma filling the air, a small comfort in the midst of his turmoil. He pulled out his laptop, the gentle hum of the machine breaking the morning silence. Ryan's first call was to Jack Reeves, Technova's head of security. Jack had been with Ryan since the early days, a former police detective with a network of contacts throughout the city. The phone rang twice before Jack's gruff voice answered. "Jack, I need a favor." Ryan said, keeping his voice low. It's personal. I need you to look into someone for me. Discreetly. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sure thing, boss. Who are we talking about? Ryan hesitated, the words sticking in his throat. Sarah Bennett. Another pause, longer this time. When Jack spoke again, his tone was carefully neutral. You're Sarah? Are you sure about this, Ryan? Just do it, Jack, Ryan said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. I need to know who she's been meeting, where she goes when she's not at work or with me. Everything. All right, Jack said, his tone softening slightly. I'll get on it right away. You'll have a preliminary report by the end of the day. Ryan ended the call, feeling a mix of guilt and determination. He hated the idea of spying on Sarah, but the alternative, confronting her without all the facts, seemed worse. At the office, Ryan threw himself into work with a fervor that surprised even his most dedicated employees. He reviewed reports, made calls, and fine-tuned their presentation for the board. The constant buzz of activity around him was a welcome distraction from the gnawing uncertainty in his gut. Around midday, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Can we talk tonight, please? Ryan stared at the message, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. After a long moment, he typed back, Working late, tomorrow. He felt a pang of guilt at the lie, but pushed it aside. He needed time to gather information, time to prepare himself for whatever truth awaited him. As promised, Jack's preliminary report arrived in Ryan's encrypted email by the end of the day. Ryan waited until the office had emptied out before opening it, his heart pounding. The soft glow of his desk lamp cast long shadows across the room as he began to read. The report was thorough, as he'd expected from Jack. Sarah's movements over the past month were detailed, along with a list of frequent contacts. One name stood out, Michael Reeves, a rising star in the New York art scene. There were photos, too. Sarah and Michael at a cafe, heads bent close in conversation. The two of them entering an apartment building in Chelsea, Michael's residence, according to the report. Sarah, alone, leaving the same building hours later, her hair mussed and her expression unreadable. Ryan felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning. He closed the laptop, his mind reeling. What now? Confront Sarah with the evidence? Hire a private investigator to dig deeper? Or simply walk away? End things before he could be hurt any further? As he sat in his darkened office, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, Ryan realized he wasn't ready to make that decision. Not yet. He needed more information, more certainty. He pulled out his phone and dialed Jack again. I need you to keep digging, he said without preamble. I want to know everything about this Michael Reeves. His background, his finances, his connection to Sarah's gallery. Everything. You got it, boss, Jack replied, a note of concern in his voice. But Ryan, are you sure this is the way you want to handle this? Maybe you should talk to Sarah, hear her side of things. Ryan's jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck tensing. Just get me the information, Jack. I'll handle the rest. As he ended the call, Ryan felt a familiar sensation settling over him. The cold, calculating focus that had served him so well in business. He would approach this like any other problem. Gather data, analyze the situation, and make an informed decision. But as he gathered his things to leave, a photo on his desk caught his eye. It was from a vacation he and Sarah had taken last year to the Amalfi Coast. They were both laughing, eyes bright with happiness, the blue Mediterranean stretching out behind them. The memory of that carefree time felt like a lifetime ago. For a moment, Ryan's resolve wavered. Was he making a mistake? Should he give Sarah a chance to explain? Then he remembered the text message, Sarah's evasive responses, the photos of her with Michael. His expression hardened, the warmth of the memory fading as quickly as it had come. As he left the office, Ryan felt as if he was standing on the edge of a precipice. His next moves would determine the course of his personal life, just as surely as his business decisions had shaped his professional one. And Ryan Collins was determined to come out on top, whatever the cost. Ryan stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, the harsh fluorescent light accentuating the dark circles under his eyes. It had been a week since he'd begun his covert investigation into Sarah's activities, and the strain was starting to show. The man looking back at him seemed older, more haggard than he remembered. He splashed cold water on his face, the shock of it momentarily clearing his mind. As he reached for a towel, his hand brushed against Sarah's robe hanging nearby. The soft fabric and lingering scent of her perfume sent a pang through his heart. As he knotted his tie, Ryan's mind wandered to the early days of their relationship. He remembered the electric excitement of their first meeting at a charity gala, the way Sarah's laughter had cut through the stuffy atmosphere. He'd been drawn to her independence, her passion for art, the way she challenged him to see the world differently. When had things changed? When had he stopped listening to her stories about her latest exhibitions? When had their conversations devolved into discussions about schedules and social obligations? Ryan's phone buzzed, jolting him from his reverie. It was a message from Jack. New information. Meet me at the usual place in an hour. With a sigh, Ryan finished dressing and headed out. As he rode the elevator down to the parking garage, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing control of his relationship, of his emotions, perhaps even of his carefully constructed life. The usual place was a nondescript diner in Queens, far from the prying eyes of Manhattan's elite. The bell above the door jingled as Ryan entered, the smell of coffee and greasy food filling his nostrils. Jack was already there when Ryan arrived, a manila folder on the table in front of him. "What do you have?" Ryan asked, sliding into the booth. The vinyl seat squeaked beneath him. Jack pushed the folder across the table, his expression unreadable. "It's not what you think, boss," he said, his voice low. Ryan opened the folder, bracing himself. Inside were more photos of Sarah with Michael, but these were different. They showed the two of them in animated discussion over blueprints and art sketches. There were emails discussing a secret project and surprise installation. "I don't understand," Ryan said, looking up at Jack in confusion. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow over the scene. Jack leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Michael Reeves isn't Sarah's lover. He's an artist she's been collaborating with on a secret installation. It's meant to be a surprise for you, for your anniversary next month." Ryan felt as if the air had been knocked out of him, relief warred with shame and embarrassment. But the text message, her sneaking around. "She was trying to keep it a secret," Jack explained gently. "The message you saw was about meeting to work on the project. She's been juggling this with her regular work, hence the odd hours and secretive behavior." Ryan sat back, his mind reeling. He'd been so quick to assume the worst, to let his insecurities and paranoia take over. And in doing so, he'd nearly destroyed the best thing in his life. "What have I done, Jack?" he whispered, more to himself than to his friend. The weight of his actions settled on him like a lead blanket. Jack's expression softened. "You haven't done anything yet, Ryan. But you need to talk to her, really talk to her, before it's too late." As Ryan left the diner, the cool air hit him like a slap to the face. He felt as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, only to be replaced by a new one. He'd allowed his fears and his need for control to nearly ruin his relationship. Now, he had to find a way to make things right. The city streets seemed different as he drove home, the familiar landmarks taking on new meaning. He passed the art gallery where he and Sarah had shared their first kiss, the park where they'd spent countless Sunday afternoons. Each memory was a reminder of what he stood to lose. As he pulled into the parking garage of their building, Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation ahead. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to fight for their relationship. It was time to confront the shadows that had nearly torn them apart, and to step into the light of honesty and trust. With a renewed sense of purpose, Ryan made his way to the elevator, ready to face whatever came next. The future of his relationship with Sarah hung in the balance, and he was determined not to let it slip away. While Ryan had been consumed by his investigation, Sarah Bennett had been on a journey of her own. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, hurt, and a growing sense of distance from the man she loved. Sarah sat in her office at the gallery, surrounded by the artwork she'd curated for their upcoming exhibition. The room was filled with a cacophony of colors and textures, each piece vying for attention. Usually, this was her sanctuary, a place where she felt most alive. But today, the vibrant canvases seemed to mock her, their emotions too raw, their stories too close to home. She picked up her phone, thumb hovering over Ryan's contact. The screen's glow illuminated her face in the dimly lit office. She'd lost count of how many times she'd nearly called him over the past week, wanting to demand an explanation for his sudden coldness, his late nights at the office, his evasive responses to her messages. But each time, she'd stopped herself. Because underlying all the hurt and confusion was a deeper fear. That perhaps Ryan had finally grown tired of her, of the life they'd built together. A knock on her office door startled her out of her thoughts. The sound echoed in the quiet space, making her jump slightly. Michael Reeves poked his head in, his usual easy smile replaced by a look of concern. "Hey, Sarah. You okay? You seemed a million miles away." Sarah forced a smile, setting her phone down. "I'm fine, just a bit distracted. How's the piece coming along?" Michael entered the office, closing the door behind him. The scent of paint and turpentine clung to him, a familiar smell that usually brought Sarah comfort. "It's getting there. But I'm more concerned about you right now. Is everything all right with Ryan?" Sarah's carefully constructed facade crumbled. To her horror, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been so distant lately. I think he might be pulling away." Michael sat down across from her, his expression sympathetic. "Have you talked to him about it?" Sarah shook her head, a tear escaping down her cheek. "I've tried, but he's always working late, always too busy, and I'm afraid of what he might say if I push too hard." "Sarah," Michael said gently, leaning forward, "you can't let fear dictate your actions. You and Ryan have something special. Don't let it slip away without a fight." As Michael left, Sarah turned to the window, looking out at the bustling city below. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street. People hurrying by, each lost in their own world. She thought about the installation they were creating, the hours of work she'd poured into it. It was meant to be a testament to her love for Ryan, a bridge between their two worlds, his world of technology and progress, and her world of art and emotion. But what if it was too late? What if, in her attempt to create this surprise, she'd inadvertently pushed Ryan away? Sarah made a decision. She couldn't wait any longer. Tonight, she would confront Ryan, lay all her cards on the table. For better or worse, she needed to know where they stood. As she gathered her things to leave, her phone buzzed with a message. Her heart raced as she saw Ryan's name on the screen. "We need to talk. Dinner at home tonight." Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she typed her reply. "Yes, I'll be there." The subway ride home was a blur of noise and motion, Sarah's mind racing with all the things she wanted to say to Ryan. As she walked the final blocks to their apartment, the weight of the upcoming conversation settled on her shoulders. She took a deep breath before entering their home, the familiar scent of Ryan's cologne lingering in the air. It was time to face the shadows that had been growing between them, to fight for the love they shared. The penthouse was quiet when Ryan arrived home, the setting sun casting long shadows across the living room. The soft hum of the city below was muffled by the thick windows, creating an almost eerie silence within. He found Sarah on the balcony, silhouetted against the fading light, a glass of wine in her hand. "Hey," he said softly, stepping out to join her. The cool evening air carried the scent of her perfume, a fragrance that had once brought him comfort, but now twisted his stomach with guilt. Sarah turned, and Ryan's heart clenched at the wariness in her eyes. "Hey," she replied, her voice equally soft, but tinged with uncertainty. For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between them. The distant sound of traffic below filled the void, a reminder of the world continuing on despite their personal turmoil. Finally, Ryan took a deep breath, the words he'd rehearsed on the way home suddenly seeming inadequate. "Sarah, I owe you an apology." Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise. Whatever she'd been expecting, it clearly wasn't this. For what? She asked cautiously, her grip tightening on the wine glass. Ryan moved to stand beside her, looking out at the city skyline. The lights were starting to flicker on, a tapestry of illumination spreading across the urban landscape. For not trusting you. For letting my insecurities and my need for control almost destroy the best thing in my life. He turned to face her, forcing himself to meet her gaze. The fading sunlight caught the tears forming in her eyes, making them glisten. I know about the installation, about your work with Michael. I thought you were having an affair. Sarah's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. The wine in her glass sloshed dangerously as she set it down with more force than necessary. You thought I was cheating on you. Is that why you've been so distant, so cold? Ryan nodded, shame washing over him. Instead of talking to you, I started investigating. I had Jack follow you, gather information. I convinced myself I was protecting myself, but really, I was just afraid. Afraid of what? Sarah asked, her voice a mix of hurt and confusion. A gust of wind swept across the balcony, causing her to shiver slightly. Afraid of losing you, Ryan admitted, his voice breaking. Afraid that I'd become so focused on success, on maintaining control, that I'd pushed you away. And in trying to prevent that, I almost made it a reality. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold herself together. Ryan, how could you think I would cheat on you, after everything we've been through together? I don't know, Ryan said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I saw the text message about meeting someone, and then you were being secretive, and I let my fears take over. I'm so sorry, Sarah. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd heard. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and controlled, but Ryan could hear the hurt beneath it. I've been working on that installation for months, Ryan. It was meant to be a surprise for our anniversary, a way to bridge our two worlds. Do you have any idea how hurt I've been this past week, thinking you were pulling away from me? Ryan felt as if his heart was breaking. He reached out tentatively, relieved when Sarah didn't pull away from his touch. I never meant to hurt you, Sarah. I love you more than anything in this world. I forgot how to show it. Sarah's expression softened slightly, a glimmer of the love they shared breaking through her pain. We both forgot, I think. We've been so caught up in our own worlds, our own projects. When was the last time we really talked, really listened to each other? Ryan gently pulled Sarah closer, encouraged when she didn't resist. You're right. I've been so focused on success, on being in control, that I lost sight of what really matters. You matter, Sarah. Us, we matter. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I love you, Ryan. But love isn't enough if we can't trust each other, if we can't communicate. Ryan nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. I know. I want to do better, Sarah. I want us to do better. Can we start over? Try to rebuild what we had. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, and Ryan felt as if his entire future hung in the balance. The city lights twinkled around them, a silent witness to this pivotal moment in their relationship. Finally, she squeezed his hands. Yes, she said softly. But we have a lot of work to do, Ryan. A lot to talk about. Ryan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. I know, he said, and I'm ready to do that work. Together. As they stood there on the balcony, the last rays of sunlight fading into twilight, Ryan realized that this was just the beginning. They had a long road ahead, full of difficult conversations and painful truths, but for the first time in weeks, he felt hope. Hope for their future, and hope for himself. The shadows that had threatened to engulf them were beginning to recede, and in their place, the promise of a new dawn was starting to emerge. The following weekend, Ryan and Sarah decided to take a step back from their busy lives and spend some quality time together. They rented a cozy cabin in the Catskills, away from the constant buzz of the city and the pressures of their respective careers. As they drove up the winding mountain road, The cityscape gave way to lush forests. The car filled with the scent of pine, a refreshing change from the urban air they were used to. Sarah gazed out the window, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the glass. "It's beautiful up here," she murmured, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Ryan glanced over, a small smile tugging at his lips. "It is. I can't remember the last time we did something like this." The cabin was rustic but charming, with a large stone fireplace and a wraparound porch. As they settled in, the tension that had been their constant companion for weeks began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism. That evening, they sat on the cabin's porch, watching the sun dip below the tree-lined horizon. The chirping of crickets and the distant call of an owl created a soothing backdrop. Ryan realized how long it had been since they'd simply existed in each other's presence without distractions. The silence between them was comfortable, yet charged with the weight of unspoken thoughts and feelings. Sarah was the first to break the silence. "I think it's time we really talk, Ryan," she said, her voice soft but determined. "About everything." Ryan nodded, feeling a mix of apprehension and relief. "You're right. Where should we start?" Sarah turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. The fading light cast a warm glow on her features, reminding Ryan of why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. "Why don't you tell me when you first started to doubt us, to doubt me?" Ryan took a deep breath, forcing himself to be completely honest. "I think it started gradually. I noticed you seemed distracted, always on your phone, canceling plans last minute. At first, I told myself it was just work stress. But then you saw that text," Sarah finished for him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Ryan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But it wasn't just the text. I realized I didn't know what was going on in your life anymore. We used to share everything, and suddenly I felt like an outsider." Sarah's expression softened. "Oh, Ryan, I never meant to make you feel that way. I was so focused on creating this perfect surprise for you. I didn't realize how it might look from your perspective." Ryan reached out, taking her hand. The familiar warmth of her skin against his was comforting. "I should have talked to you. Instead, I let my insecurities take over. I'm so sorry, Sarah." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry too. I should have been more open about the project, found a way to include you without ruining the surprise. But Ryan, there's something else we need to address." Ryan tensed, bracing himself. "What is it?" "Your need for control," Sarah said gently. "The fact that your first instinct was to investigate me rather than talk to me. That's not healthy, Ryan. For either of us." Ryan felt a wave of shame wash over him. The cool night air suddenly felt chilly against his skin. "You're right. I've always been like that in business, needing to have all the information, to be 10 steps ahead. I never realized how much it was affecting our relationship." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and concern. "I fell in love with your drive, your ambition. But somewhere along the way, it started to feel like I was just another asset to be managed, another variable to control." Her words hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. The distant hoot of an owl punctuated the silence that followed. "God, Sarah, I never meant to make you feel that way. I love you. You're not an asset or a variable. You're everything to me." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, glinting in the moonlight that had begun to bathe the porch. "I know you love me, Ryan. But love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day. To trust, to communicate, to put each other first." As the night deepened around them, Ryan and Sarah continued to talk. They discussed their fears, their hopes, the little resentments that had built up over time. The sound of the forest at night, the rustling leaves, the occasional snapping twig, created a cocoon of privacy around them. It was painful at times, but with each truth unveiled, they felt the distance between them shrinking. By the time the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, they both felt exhausted, but lighter. They had taken the first, crucial steps towards rebuilding their relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual understanding. As they watched the sun rise, painting the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold, Ryan wrapped his arm around Sarah. She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" Sarah asked, her voice thick with emotion and lack of sleep. Ryan pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Yeah, we are. It won't be easy, but we're in this together." The new day dawned, bringing with it the promise of a fresh start and the opportunity to rewrite their story. The weeks following their weekend getaway were challenging but transformative for Ryan and Sarah. They had agreed to make some significant changes in their lives, starting with couples therapy. Dr. Elena Martinez, their therapist, helped them navigate the complex emotions and patterns that had led to their recent struggles. Her office was a neutral space, decorated in calming tones with comfortable furniture that invited openness and honesty. In one particularly impactful session, she asked them to role-play, with each taking on the other's perspective. "Ryan," Dr. Martinez said, her voice gentle but firm, "I want you to be Sarah. Tell me how you've been feeling lately." Ryan took a deep breath, the unfamiliar exercise making him slightly uncomfortable. He closed his eyes, trying to put himself in Sarah's shoes. I feel overlooked sometimes. Like my passions and my work are secondary to Ryan's. I love him. But I worry that he sees me more as an accessory to his success than as an equal partner." Sarah's eyes widened at his words, a look of recognition crossing her face. When it was her turn to be Ryan, she said, "I'm afraid of losing control. Of losing Sarah. My work has always been my safety net, the one thing I could control. But I'm realizing that by trying to control everything, I'm pushing away the person I love most." These exercises, while difficult, helped them gain a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives. The sound of traffic outside the office window served as a reminder of the world continuing on while they did this important work on their relationship. They began to implement small but significant changes in their daily lives. Ryan made a conscious effort to be more present when Sarah talked about her work. He started asking questions about her projects, even visiting her gallery to see things from her point of view. The vibrant colors and bold strokes of the artwork began to take on new meaning for him as he saw them through Sarah's eyes. Sarah, in turn, made an effort to be more transparent about her schedule and to include Ryan in her world more often. She invited him to artist meetings and gallery events, watching with pride as he engaged with her colleagues and showed genuine interest in her passion. They also started a new tradition of unplugged evenings, twice a week, where they would turn off all devices and spend quality time together. Sometimes they would cook dinner together, the kitchen filled with the aroma of sautéing garlic and the sound of their laughter. Other times they would simply sit and talk, rediscovering the connection that had brought them together in the first place. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through Central Park, the cool autumn air nipping at their cheeks, Sarah turned to Ryan with a smile. "You know, I never showed you the installation I was working on." Ryan's eyes lit up with curiosity. "I'd love to see it." Sarah led him to a secluded area of the park where a large, covered structure stood. With a flourish, she pulled away the covering, revealing a stunning piece of interactive art. It was a fusion of technology and traditional art forms, with holographic displays interacting with painted canvases and sculptures. "It's called Bridges," Sarah explained, her voice filled with excitement. "It represents the bridging of our two worlds, your world of technology and my world of art. But it's also about the bridges we build in our relationship, connecting us even when we feel far apart." Ryan stood in awe, taking in every detail of the piece. The play of light and shadow, the intricate details that revealed themselves upon closer inspection, the way the digital elements seamlessly integrated with the physical art. It was breathtaking. He saw the countless hours of work, the depth of thought and emotion that had gone into its creation. But more than that, he saw Sarah's love for him, expressed in a language that spoke to both their souls. Tears pricked at his eyes as he turned to Sarah. "It's beautiful," he whispered, pulling her close. "Thank you for sharing this with me, for sharing yourself with me." As they stood there, surrounded by the physical manifestation of their love and understanding, both Ryan and Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope for their future together. The installation glowed softly in the gathering dusk, a beacon of light in the shadows they had overcome. The journey ahead would not be without its challenges, but they were facing it together, with open hearts and minds. Their love, tested by doubt and strengthened by honesty, had emerged more resilient than ever. As they left the park, hand in hand, the city around them seemed to pulse with new life and possibility. The shadows that had once threatened to engulf them had receded, replaced by the warm glow of understanding and renewed commitment. Their story was far from over, but this chapter, one of growth, forgiveness, and rediscovery, had set the stage for many more to come. Ryan and Sarah stepped forward into their future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. 6 months after their fateful confrontation, Ryan stood nervously in front of a full-length mirror, adjusting his bow tie. The soft rustle of fabric filled the quiet room as he smoothed down his tuxedo jacket. Today was a big day, not just for him, but for him and Sarah as a couple. "You look great, boss," Jack said, clapping him on the shoulder. The familiar gesture brought a smile to Ryan's face. "Stop fidgeting." Ryan chuckled, grateful for his friend's presence. "Thanks, Jack, for everything. I don't know if Sarah and I would have made it without your help." Jack shrugged, a smile playing on his lips. "All I did was show you what was right in front of you. You two did the hard work yourselves." A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Sarah's sister, Emma. She poked her head in, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's time," she said with a grin. "You ready?" Ryan took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The scent of his cologne mingled with the fragrance of flowers that filled the air. "More than ready," he said, his voice steady and sure. As he walked out onto the rooftop of the art gallery, Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The space had been transformed into a magical setting, with twinkling lights and flowers everywhere. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the scene, the city skyline providing a stunning backdrop. But all of that paled in comparison to the vision walking towards him. Sarah, radiant in a sleek white gown, made her way down the aisle. Her smile was brighter than any of the lights surrounding them, and Ryan felt his heart swell with love and gratitude. As they exchanged vows in front of their closest friends and family, Ryan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The challenges they'd faced, the truths they'd confronted, had only made their bond stronger. "I, Ryan, take you, Sarah, to be my wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. The weight of the words, the promise they held, filled him with a sense of purpose. "I promise to listen more than I speak, to support your dreams as fiercely as my own, and to choose you and our love every single day." Sarah's eyes shimmered with happy tears as she recited her own vows. "I, Sarah, take you, Ryan, to be my husband. I promise to be your partner in all things, to trust in our love even when times are tough, and to always communicate with honesty and compassion." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupted from their gathered loved ones. The sound of applause and joyful laughter filled the air. Ryan and Sarah turned to face their guests, hands clasped tightly together, ready to step into their new life as husband and wife. The reception that followed was a joyous celebration of love and new beginnings. The art gallery, filled with pieces that represented their journey, provided the perfect backdrop for their union. As they shared their first dance, Sarah leaned in close to Ryan. The soft strains of music enveloped them in their own private world. "How does it feel to be out of control for once, Mr. Collins?" she teased gently, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Ryan laughed, pulling her closer. The familiar scent of her perfume, now intertwined with memories of their struggles and triumphs, filled his senses. "Surprisingly wonderful, Mrs. Collins, as long as I'm out of control with you." As the night wore on, Ryan found a quiet moment to slip away to the balcony. He looked out over the city. The same view that had once felt cold and indifferent now seemed full of promise and possibility. Sarah joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. The warmth of her body against his back was a comforting presence. Penny, for your thoughts. Ryan turned, enveloping her in a warm embrace. I was just thinking about how far we've come. How grateful I am that we fought for us. Sarah smiled up at him, her face glowing with happiness. Me too. But you know this is just the beginning, right? We've got a whole lifetime of challenges and joys ahead of us. Ryan nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. The city lights twinkled around them, a reflection of the bright future that lay ahead. I know, and I can't wait to face every single one of them with you by my side. As they rejoined their guests, the sound of laughter and celebration washing over them, Ryan realized that true success wasn't measured in wealth or power. It was measured in moments like these, surrounded by love, secure in the knowledge that whatever shadows may come, they would face them together. The night sky above was clear, stars twinkling alongside the city lights. As Ryan and Sarah shared another dance, lost in each other's eyes, they knew that their story was far from over. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with love, understanding, and the unshakable bond they had forged through their trials. The shadows that had once threatened to tear them apart had become the very thing that strengthened their relationship. And as they moved forward into their shared future, Ryan and Sarah were ready for whatever life might bring, knowing that together, they could overcome any obstacle. What did you think of the story? Please leave a comment with your opinion. 2 buttons will appear next to it, one to subscribe, if you haven't already, and another to watch other exciting stories. Make your choice. Thanks for watching this far. See you soon.